It's just filthy. Those guys was on, they had, I was doing my heart attack before, whatever they call it. And,
I didn't have the reflective vest
in the bleachers, you know, just shit all over. I had probably 10 cups of powder on the desk reminding downstairs, and I had to take it down, no, it didn't.
but every time I picked your house,
Get rid of it.
it's
Sunday, just straight away.
You can get the trophies for the horse
so
bowl.
then we were gathered that,
They have a trophy and a banner for, you know,
which is why
champion, New York State Horse Bowl champion, weight class.
we just kind of.
No,
It's like, I said, they don't even know what's going on.
And just two of us.
I'm not going down this year. I'm not going down this year when I
There
heard
were more people,
how bad it was.
there isn't a lot of vendors. And that big expo building,
It's a waste.
talked to the guy, $50 million to build that building. He says, the only thing I know that they use it for other than when the fair's going on is they use it to give out COVID shots. 50 million. Wonder where money's going?
Mhm.
There you go.
Well,
Okay, let me take and bring this meeting to order for the agricultural committee for the month of August 2022. First on our agenda is Mr. Larry Becker and Mr. Brian Crossack to address the board, please.
Want us to come up front or?
Please.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Mandated, Larry. You don't
Okay,
go to jail.
I don't know how much the composition of this committee has changed over the last year, but you may recall we were here to talk about the same topic last year as well. It's changed a little bit from last year. Last year, when we came in to talk about it, the EDC had a resolution in allow counties to opt out of the holiday month. We were able to stop that resolution. So then they went to the legislature, and this year the legislature, both houses passed a bill. It has not gone to the governor's office yet. She's not called for it yet, but we are looking for her to veto it. Now, this is just a little bit of background here. The bill is very short, so I'm going to read it to you so we're all on the same page. It's a change in the conservation law, amendment to the conservation law, and how it's stated is notwithstanding any provision in this chapter, any county by resolution or local law may prohibit any hunting during a 7-day special late bow, special longbow, and muzzleloader season that has been adopted for conservation by the department from December 26th to January 1st in the southern zone. Now, I know you've received a letter. The board has received a letter from Mr. Levinsky, John Levinsky. I know John, he and I were back at least 12 years on statewide conservation issues. He is not a Wyoming County resident, okay? And I think he said in his introductory statement on email that he's representing some outdoor groups. I don't know who John represents, just so you folks know where Brian and I are coming from and who we represent. I think you all probably know it, but we are the Wildlife Federation, Wyoming County Wildlife Federation. He and I have been officers for at least 12 years now or more. So we know there's 11 member organizations that are conservation and sportsmen's organizations in the Wildlife Federation. In addition, I'm on the executive committee of the Sportsmen's Advisory Council to the State Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus. We were sanctioned by the Sportsmen's Caucus to give them advice on different sportsmen's issues. There are 12 major statewide organizations that belong to the caucus, okay, or to the council, I should say. Organizations like the Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited, the Crossbow Coalition, Safari Club, Trout Unlimited. There's 12 different statewide organizations. The only reason I'm bringing this up is we got a feel for the pulse of the people coming from in the state, and more importantly, from here, for Wyoming County. Now, neither organization took a stance on the holiday hunt because the sporting community is split quite heavily on this, okay? There are some hunters, deer hunters that want it. There are snowmobilers that don't want it. There are small game hunters that don't want it. There are trappers that don't want it, and there are predator hunters that don't want it. Because they just feel that there's been a long deer season and now they can get out and do their thing without being worried about that. State doesn't seem to be concerned. They said, well, there's not going to be any safety issues or anything, but it's more than a safety issue. So we didn't take a stance because our member organizations, our members are split on the thing, okay? But what we're taking a stance on is the opt-out. And the reason we're doing that is it's going to set a precedent, right? Once you allow a county to start opting out on different rules and regulations and seasons, then it opens the door for Pandora's box, because now you're going to switch from doing scientific management of wildlife to political management of wildlife, right? And by that, I mean, we know in the past, and I've been involved in this stuff for, you guys are sick of hearing me, for over 30 years. There are various municipalities, and in some cases counties, that said, well, we don't like trapping, so we want to stop that, okay? We don't like shooting these poor little squirrels. We like these little fuzzy creatures like squirrels and rabbits. We got to stop that. What we're afraid of is when you set the precedent and allow counties to start making a decision on one issue, which is the holiday hunt, then some of these other counties are going to step in and say, well, if you can do it there, why can't we do it here for this particular season or bag limit or whatever the case may be? So that's our basic rationale. We feel that it's definitely going to be a mistake to allow counties to do that, like I say, from the precedent side. The other thing is, if any of you are in favor of saying, well, we ought to be able to have some local decision on this, particularly the holiday hunt, careful what you wish for, okay? Because the minute they pass that law and you've got to make a decision, you're going to have to say, okay, no holiday hunt or there will be one. And remember, your constituents, our residents are split on this issue. You're going to be in a lose-lose situation. The only reason they're trying to push this, DEC is trying to push, in fact, county opt-out, is because they're lightning right now. They're getting a lot of blowback on this whole thing, back and forth. They're going to shift the lightning rod to local counties. Right? You're going to have to make a decision as to whether that hunt will go on or won't go on. And that's your choice. You know, whatever the board decides, it's fine. But believe me, you're going to start hearing a lot of blowback from various residents. It won't be from me, you know, but you will hear the blowback. You know, like I said, you got the letter from John. He articulated the whole thing. It doesn't represent Wyoming County. I'm not sure who he represents. He and I agree on one thing: you should have never put the holiday hunt in. But that's just me personally. I'm not speaking for any other organizations right now. But we disagree on that. So open up for questions or comments. Brian,
you've read it exactly the way I wrote it, so I can cover it.
What's the reason for it? They're thinking it's management of the deer population? Is that why they opened it?
No, in fact, the DEC said it's not a deer population issue. They kind of short-circuited the process for the sportsman's groups. Okay, this was a top management decision in the DEC because a couple of top managers said it would be nice if our kids are coming home on college vacation, for holiday vacation from college, and we'd like to go out and deer hunt with the summer. Now understand, this is only supposed to be for leftover tags, archery, muzzleloader, or crossbow. That's all it's supposed to be for. I'm not sure that that was the case last fall as far as how people interpret it, because I heard a lot of multiple shots around my house. There aren't too many multiple shot muzzleloaders. Okay, but we heard a lot of whoa, 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 like that. So I don't know how much people all read the thing, but back to you, Jim. No, they admit it's not a wildlife management issue. So that's another problem. The other thing you're gonna get into, and it appears it wasn't a problem last year, is the wildlife management units overlap counties. So Wyoming County opts out, and Erie County opts in, and already the bordering counties we have. And I think originally when I wrote you last year, it's like four different counties that overlap the Region 9 WMU, okay? So people could inadvertently cross the line and not know it. Because we don't have any line markers in the woods anywhere that I'm aware of, you know? So, okay, any other questions? Did that answer you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Larry, how big of an issue do you think this is gonna be? I mean, I'm not in favor of a holiday hunt. But by the end of the deer season, there's hardly anybody hunting, you know, before opening day, you got guys killing each other trying to get out of your traffic, you know? Yeah. The way things are now, things are really tightened up. People just can't pull out the road someplace to go hunting, and they're hunting in the woods anymore. So, I mean, and then when you look at the guys hunting, they aren't, you know, 16, 18 years old, you know, most other guys like us that, you know, the drill. It's just like fishing. How many kids you see fishing, you know?
Right. Well, I was surprised that there was a lot more activity around my place, not on my place, because we didn't hunt it, you know. But there was a lot more activity than I anticipated. So I don't know how big a deal it's going to be. And by the way, related to that, a lot of people have said, well, snowmobilers shouldn't be upset because there's no snow that time of year. What we're hearing, you know, from the snowmobilers, and I haven't heard it in Wyoming County, don't misunderstand me. I heard this from the Sportsman Advisory Council, different representatives from around the state are saying the snowmobilers like to use that time to prepare the trails, you know, remove deadfalls and stuff like that. Well, that's what we're hearing.
That's bullshit.
That's full.
Okay.
They're out there in September, October,
As soon as the corn's off.
They're out there.
And I don't
That's a
know,
long way from Christmas, you know?
I don't know if your folks will hear anything from Wyoming County.
I have.
Yeah.
I did last year on this, from Folsom Tillage Radishes, very much against it. I remember a discussion with a woman who says, well, there's never enough snow till that year was December 18th. I said, well, then by your logic, it means there's always enough snow on December 19th, that's right. And the next year, December 24th, it was just as green as could be.
Mhm.
And I brought it up to her, she gave me a very big F you, and I won the argument. You know, some of the best snowmobiling does happen in November and December. And ever since this law came out 15, 20 years ago, the snowmobilers are the ones getting shafted, and bars and stuff that have the snowmobiles come into them, and they can't go out because deer hunting is done. This regulation, I say bold to somebody saying that we're out setting up at this time of the year.
Somebody asked me, I'm just gonna tell them where back to the church.
Well, so the board has passed two resolutions in opposition, right? One in 2020 and one in 2021.
We need to make a motion.
What Larry's saying is that they're in opposition to the ability to opt out, but they're also in opposition for the better part, or them personally, to that just this shouldn't be going on in the first place.
Yeah, but again, I want to make sure you're clear. When I say I'm in opposition to holiday hunt, I'm not speaking for the Wildlife Federation. Okay, I'm speaking just for myself, because as Brian was saying, we couldn't get agreement within the Federation. So that's why it's such a mixed bag. They just created the rattlesnakes, you know. It should have never happened, but it's there, and it's something we have to deal with.
So you want me to read the resolution that you adopted last November, just so that you know what your position was then? The resolution is 21-491. And it's titled Resolution in Opposition to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Holiday Hunt Regulation and urges the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to reverse the recently approved holiday hunt regulation in its entirety. Whereas on September 15, 2021, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation announced the release of a proposed regulation that, if adopted, would allow counties to opt out of the recently established end of year deer hunt, slated to occur annually between December 26 and January 1. The holiday hunt is an extension of the late bow and muzzleloader deer season in New York's southern zone. And whereas the Wyoming County Board of Supervisors passed resolution number 20-405 entitled Opposition to a Proposed Late Deer Season Regulation on October 13, 2020, citing 279 miles of trails maintained throughout Wyoming County by snowmobile clubs that do not open until after the end of big game season. And whereas many small businesses support and depend on the snowmobile trails that pass by their establishments, many of which were abruptly closed due to COVID-19 and are only now starting to get back on their feet. Delaying the economic support that snowmobile activity provides is unacceptable. Now therefore be it resolved, the Wyoming County Board of Supervisors strongly opposes the recently established end of year deer hunt slated to occur annually between December 26th and January 1. And be it further resolved, the Wyoming County Board of Supervisors calls for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to reverse this recently approved holiday hunt regulation in its entirety. And be it further resolved that the clerk to the board shall forward copies of this resolution to Governor Kathy Hochul, New York State Senator Patrick Galvin, New York State Assemblyman David DiPietro, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Commissioner Basil Sagos, the New York State Association of Counties, Intercounty Association of Western New York, and all others deemed necessary and proper.
We send this to NISAC.
Yep.
Did it go through the ag committee?
I don't remember.
It was sent.
Yeah, I'll call Alex, so sure we get this. I'm okay with that.
It'll need to be updated a little bit.
Yeah, take COVID-19.
Well, that was what was passed last year, so this year, and Larry, he spoke about the discussion that he had with the board on the holiday hunt. So in your packet is like the bullet points that he used, discussion with BOS on the holiday hunt opt out, so those bullet points are in there, and I see some good information for a new resolution. And there's also a letter that he wrote on behalf of the Wildlife Federation that
We need to do something. I want to take this to nice actor. Approval there.
and it will be,
It has to go
late-
through board meeting, so it's official.
that's right, and it'll be a late submission. So
Well, we can let Alex know that it's coming.
The other part of the issue,
Pardon me?
Is there time to get that in?
Yeah. Meetings like in 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
well, our board meeting is the 13th, right? So I would have to send Alex probably a draft of the resolution so that, and then just let her know when it passes.
Yeah, because we want to get it, I mean, we can bring in walk-ons and that, sometimes that doesn't make it into the,
Resolution packet.
yeah.
Yep.
with all due respect, though, the other part of this is whether you're going to request that the governor veto it or support it,
That's right.
because the bill's been passed.
By both houses. Just.
I'd be interested to see how, what kind of reaction we get in the ag committee there, would you? You said it's kind of divided.
And Larry,
We
you're
got
like,
people from downstate that, you know, we got who that would know cow and deer, you know, so.
you indicated that they don't expect the governor to call for this until later this year, but it could be anytime.
Well, you know, she should have really now, because syllabus has been set for this. You know, if counties are gonna opt out, you know, deer season, October 1st is the beginning of the bow season. I mean, hunting has started. Now, obviously, the holiday hunt is next year, but the bottom line is hunters need to know what's going on. So what I didn't say is we have written the Sportsman's Advisory Council has written a formal letter to the governor articulating why we think it's bad precedent to set, okay? And we don't know, and we know she's got an input from other organizations both ways. So that's probably why they're sitting on it. Her staff is probably running ragged, trying to figure out what do we do here, because like I said, you folks will be in a no-win position. If it passes, I think she's gonna be in a no-win position also, with the election coming up. So, gonna be interesting.
We'll see what kind of consensus we get in the Association of Counties. That'll tell the temperature.
Okay, any other questions or appreciate it?
1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just looking, to see where it was, but it's still, as of May 25th, it passed the assembly and was returned to the Senate. You see when, it's been delivered to the governor, and that starts her calendar, so.
I went into the system this morning, did a double check, and it has not been delivered to her yet. You never know when these things are gonna pop up.
So I saw one yesterday that it was introduced, and there's like a 3-day, there's like a 3-day waiting period that was waived in both houses passed it, and the governor signed it the very day that it was introduced.
We're in tomorrow to talk to the safety committee about that issue. What I said, my wife's in the medical procedure, so I got a cop out of Brian here. I may make it, but Brian will be here to talk about that issue. Yeah, that's the big gun control. Firearms and animal control that they passed. And they actually didn't allow the public to weigh in at all. It's like Cuomo did with the SAFE Act. Okay, same deal. When they got something really controversial, they shove it right down their throats and they'll go around the whole process, which is a sad way of running the government, I tell you. Well, we appreciate you letting us come in and say our piece, and we're always available if you need us for anything related. Right? You want to stay for 6 minutes? We're going to stay for one more item, then we're going to cut.
Thank you, John. So this needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
I think some new language needs to be added to it.
And
So when would we, how we're going to move out of committee?
You're gonna pass a resolution in opposition, and then we'll just clean it up by adding some of the material that Larry's provided as a representative of the Wildlife Federation.
motion from Mr. Berliner, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, next up is Camp O'Brien Rifle Range site on Weathersfield Road is added to the New York State's Registry of Superfund site. There's a lot of munitions fired off there over the years. This is more of just a public notice. We don't need to take any action on it.
As I said in the past, if anybody wants to look at all the literature that the DEC sent to us, they sent it to the town of Gainesville rather than the town of Weathersfield. Why, I don't know, but it's up to the
Don't even know where it is.
village office.
No
for the town.
mailing address for the town of Weathersfield, maybe.
So it's up there if you want to see it, the clerk has it.
We'll skip Justin, we have health agent here in the room.
Yeah.
It is. To Shepherd.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Good morning.
So,
Been a while since I've been in here. It's been a very busy
That might have
summer.
something to do with it.
And it's going to continue to be, which is a good thing.
you should know that.
I guess first item on the agenda was a grant closeout that was submitted to New York State Ag Markets here at the end of July. Essentially, we completed a waste storage project over the Silver Lake watershed at Silver Haven Farms. Farm essentially had no waste storage whatsoever, and obviously there are dairy farms that mixed manure and other waste. The storage itself, the project was in conjunction with NRCS, so both agencies working very well together to complete this project for the farm. Built I forget the actual size of it off the top of my head, but a large waste storage, concrete waste storage, and it's like a watershed to essentially hold the farm's waste for over 6 months. So they are very pleased with it. So are we. That's the gist of that one. So obviously it leads to improved water quality within the watershed, which is obviously always important. So if you has any questions for me in regards to that?
I don't think so.
Al, what percentage of that did the farm have to put in dollar wise?
So with this particular project being funded by NRCS as well, the farm had a very minimal percentage. I don't remember what it was. We were able to, with state grants, there is a match, but NRCS money counts as that match. So I had to take a stab at it without seeing the numbers in front of me. I'd say that the farm put in probably less than 10% on this particular project. NRCS paid roughly, we'll say 45, and the state paid 45%. So we try to work very closely with NRCS if we can on projects like this, so that farms aren't having to put as much out of pocket. It works out for everybody, quite honestly, it looks good for us, it looks good for NRCS, helps the farm, improves water quality. So we're very fortunate to have a very good NRCS team here in Wyoming County that we work closely with. That's not the case in every county. Oftentimes the feds and us butt heads, but that's not the case here. So it's good to have a team like that here that we can work together on.
Anything else?
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, like I said, it's been a while, so I figured I'd just give a quick update on what we've been up to. So right now, currently, we have another waste storage project under construction over in the Jingle Lake, Cataracts Creek watershed. In fact, on Monday, I just did 2.5 acres of it, so it's it looks fake green right now. Hopefully in a couple of weeks it'll look really green. The contractor's still working on some of the farmstead stuff as far as that one goes. This one's a little different where it's not completely concrete. It's actually an earthen storage with a synthetic liner throughout it, and then actually concrete in the bottom so that they can go back into it and roof solid. So pretty excited. That's another farm that had essentially no waste storage whatsoever prior to this project. So always good to give them what they need to make it through the winter months as far as spring manure goes. So still to come up this year as far as the big ag projects goes. We do have another concrete waste storage coming up that's out to bid right now, and a covered barnyard up in Cotterton that needs to be completed. So looking forward to those. Also right now we have 2 stream bank stabilization projects underway. Technically one underway and one that has been bid out. The contract has been awarded and will begin very soon. The one that's under construction right now is on the Whisquay Creek, downstream of Pike. We're working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as well as DEC and Trout Unlimited on that project. Both of these projects I'm speaking of are going to include trout habitat structures. They're actually called bunkers, which is an acronym that stands for Little Underwater Neighborhood Keepers for Rheotactic Salmonoids. They're essentially fish housing. What it amounts to is false boxes that we build and put into the bank, so it creates like an undercut bank, a false undercut bank, so the fish can get up in there and hide, prey on whatever bug species they want to go after or breed. So the project on the Whisquay that we're doing right now, there are 17 of these lumpers going in. We actually got all the lumber ready to go yesterday. Tomorrow we're having essentially a lumber building day with volunteers from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, DEC, Trout Unlimited. Actually, our NRCS team offered to help, so gonna build those, and I'm sure the contractor is just down there moving dirt as we speak, so that's gonna be a pretty cool project. The other street bank stabilization project is actually down on the Cattaraugus Creek in Arcade, right along Route 98. I should mention, both of these projects are actually on public fishing access sites, where there's erosion occurring, so. The one down on 98, essentially the same thing, going in, reshaping the bank, putting in some of these lunkers to create fish habitat, just on a smaller scale. The only trouble with that one is gonna be, and the contractor is, traffic. Pulling off Route 98 right there to get to that one's gonna be a little tricky, but I'm not gonna be out there flagging people down, so.
Where's this gonna be at?
Ring Mills, Arcade Farms, that fishing access.
I guess barn.
Just a little closer to East Arcade, though. A little closer to, there's a little pull off there, so.
Yeah, I see that there's it's been a couple of years now, there's a sign that says don't mow this grass. Is that
Yeah.
part of,
I don't know who put that up, to be honest with
I
you.
mean, usually mowed, the fishermen all park there, walk through it, get to the creek, but
Yeah,
it's been like that for 2 years.
that, I've wondered the same thing myself. I don't know.
So it's not part of soil and water.
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
Butterfly, person, butterfly.
How long does it take to do building six?
Build the entire project, or, so one down on Wiscoy, they started moving the channel on Monday, and they're anticipating being done with it by the end of next week. One down on 98 should be roughly a week, depending on how the contractor shuffles traffic is gonna have on all of it's out too, so. Once they get in there, they move pretty fast, so.
It said, what, they use hemlock for the wood?
Yep, we bought hemlock boards from the Hirschbergers down the pike, just rough cut hemlock and these boxes, these slunkers, we just cut the boards to length and screw them all together, and then, things weigh probably 500 pounds when they're all put together, because hemlock, it's not dry hemlock, so. So essentially, we need the contractor to work with the contractor to pick these things up and actually place them one by one, so it's a little bit of a tricky process, but it works. So actually, before I started here, Greg and a bunch of organizations did the same thing down on the North Branch of Wisconsin, along 362. Maybe to a little bit smaller scale, but those DEC has shot through there before and after that habitat project was completed, and the fish numbers just shot through the roof there, so. It's proven that these things work and helps improve fish populations, which helps with the fishermen and the economy and all that, so.
They stay in place when high water hits.
Yeah, because we actually, we put them in place and then we actually drive rebar down through to hold them in place, and then there's rocks, and we'll make 2x2 rocks stacked on top of it, so.
They can just set them with a box and creep it.
Yeah,
Pick it up at Lake Erie.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
And know that we use hemlock because hemlock seems to be very rot resistant once it's underwater. So as long as they stay underwater, they seem to last quite a long time, so.
No fisherman along that section of the creek that is very happy.
Oh, yeah, I bet you do. So, let's see, what else we're working on. Working with several farmers right now to develop cover cropping plans for this fall. We have funding both through the New York State Climate Resilient Farming Program and through American Farming Trust to implement cover crops. On a couple, should be about 5 different farms this fall, so we're coordinating with farms on that. We did complete a culvert replacement project with the town of Gainesville Highway Department earlier this summer. Actually, the county highway department did work on that, and we're able to utilize FOLA funding to pay for the majority of the materials for that project. So it was a very severely eroded gully is what it essentially was, and went in there, stabilized it. So that's only going to improve water quality, and you can see where the water's at. Let's see here. Staff completed NAC culvert assessments within the Oaxaca and Cattaraugus Creek watersheds earlier this summer, so that project is completed. I forget how many culverts were assessed. The main objective of this particular project was to assess these culverts for fish passage, but at the same time, we're also able to get an inventory of culverts that are either damaged, degraded, not working, all that. And so with that inventory, moving down the road, we can work with town highway departments to replace those culverts when money becomes available. So good to get that one done. Staff is also continuing to complete macro and river stream assessments throughout the county. Essentially going around with a net and kicking the stream looking for bugs. Some bugs indicate good water quality, some bugs indicate bad water quality. So this year's watershed that we're focusing on is the Buffalo Creek, the Cayuga Creek, and the Tonawanda Creek. We also coordinated that with the Oaxaca Creek Watershed Committee because they are conducting the same assessments within Wyoming County in the Oaxaca Creek watershed, so we didn't want to be overlapping there. So we've completed 5 acres of Japanese knotweed management throughout the summer. It's bamboo looking stuff, and we tried to focus on areas that again include public fishing access. So it's starting to knock this stuff back. It's very, very resilient. Probably some of these sites are going to take years of treatments to really knock it out, but all landowners that we're doing it on seem to be very happy with it. So I guess we're not going to complain about that. Let's see what else. Jake is working on Ag District Review for Ag District 2. He's chugging along on that, so that one's moving along. We also have, to get back to the ag realm, we also have 2 silage leaching management projects on the docket for this summer. One has already been completed, one is being bid out right now. So funding for those 2 projects is actually coming through the Agricultural Environmental Management Program through New York State Ag and Markets. A couple, 3 years ago, they started they're actually able to give each county $100,000 to implement projects with, whereas before this particular program was just for farm planning. So always nice to have a little extra money to spend on farms. So those are both of those projects are underway. Now our bread and butter program, the Ag Non-Point Source Solution Program, we did submit applications to round 20 of that program back in, I think it was June, either late May or June. We submitted 9 applications for that particular round of funding. We're still waiting to hear on those. Hopefully, do well on them. So that only secures work for us for the next few years. So really hoping on a good outcome on those. And again, just as usual, we're still assisting landowners with stream and wetland permits, assisting landowners and municipalities with mining plan permit updates, and lots of drainage stuff. All of a sudden, after the drought is over, all of a sudden the phone's just ringing with everybody getting rain and runoff and all that. So that's always the fun part of the job when you got to tell people that what they did on their particular property actually caused their problem. They want us to fix it. So in a nutshell, that's what this summer has consisted of so far. So we still got a lot to go, and hoping the weather holds out for a couple more months. We can get this stuff done.
Sounds like you've been busy.
Very much so.
As a government, 2 things. Have they increased the amount per acre that they regulate for cover cropping? And do they regulate on what you use and how much you use?
So as far as the reimbursement rate for the farms, what we get per acre has remained the same. I think it's around $70 an acre, if I remember right. And as far as what the farm uses for cover crops, anything is better than nothing. They do like to see I guess if the funders for these projects had it their way, ideally they'd like to see a multi-species cover crop.
I see that in some fields, or what,
Yeah,
some type of radish they're using now.
Yep.
And like at a Gainesville, a couple big fields, it's quite a variety, at least 3 different seedlings in there.
Yep.
And it looks pretty good.
yeah, some of these radishes are actually called tillage radishes. The idea is they essentially pour down into the soil and, you know, kind of break up a hard pan without having to mow or plow out, so. The whole premise of it all is soil health, you know, you gotta think of the soil as like a living creature, you know, if it's just, if it's bare throughout the winter, you don't have as much activity in the soil throughout the winter or the spring, so keeping cover on top of it not only helps keep that soil living, but it also helps reduce erosion when we get our spring runoffs and things like that, so. I have heard from several farmers that, you know, I've been doing cover crops for years that, even though it takes them a little more time and does cost them more money to do cover crops, they notice increase in yields as time goes on with their corn crop or whatever the crop happens to be. So, definite benefits all around.
I think something for you. Field next week.
Oh, cash crop.
Cash crop.
We're gonna make it pretty quick. I know that, the request for county appropriation sent to work to committee in September. I actually won't be around in September. I'll be out west hunting, so I can either speak to it today or have, one of the staff show up in September. I guess I'll leave that up to you guys, how you want me to approach that, so.
Now's the time.
All right, fair enough. Essentially, in a nutshell, our appropriation request is, I think, $800 more than last year. So we've really tried to earn a lot of income through these various grants that we're getting, and, you know, continue to chase after these grants and try to essentially earn our way through it. Appropriation request for this year is $123,514.25. So that being said, I've really tried to become more efficient with everything, especially with technologies, whether it be survey equipment or computer programs or even our vehicles. You know, we're able to do things a lot more efficiently now than we were 10 years ago. So continue to be more efficient on everything. That only helps the bottom line. I didn't have a chance to complete my numbers this morning, but essentially, I believe the return for each dollar of county appropriation is above $14 for the rate of return, as far as what soil and water brings back into Wyoming County through various grants and other programs. So, you know, like I said, our appropriation request is just a slight increase from the previous couple of years. And in 2020, when there was I think a little bit more of a budget crisis, we did actually reduce our appropriation request by $36,000 back in 2020. So, yeah, this year did not see the need to increase it dramatically or ask for a dramatic increase. So, kind of continuing on with what we're doing, no major changes. So.
And as you pointed out, what was total 100 and how much?
123,514.25.
And you brought in how many millions of dollars?
I didn't have a chance to put those numbers together, but the 9 applications that we submitted just for round 28, we asked the state for 3.6, don't quote me on that, but $3.6 million just through one particular pot of funding. So obviously we're hoping for all of that, probably won't get all of it, but yeah, I mean, not to toot our own horn, but brought in a lot of money over the past 10 years. So it's nice when all that money stays here, whether it's paying a contractor, paying a farm, you paying the staff, whatever it is, so.
That'll be submitted to their budget office.
Has been submitted, yep.
Very good. Any other questions for? Yeah.
Thank you, perfect. I will not see you in September.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Abby, how are you today?
How are you all? I don't have a lot this month because we are honestly still in fair mode. I have another staff member headed back to State Fair this afternoon. I did a back and forth last week to bring kids to dairy judging. We've had people staying in the dorm, so we're still very much in fair mode. We just got our model milking cows and equipment from the fairgrounds. I'll have full fair numbers next month, but right now we were pleasantly surprised with participation. So we had a lot of people submit entries for us at the very last minute, which we thought might be the case, but we weren't sure until the last minute. So actually participation was up in most of our youth areas, which was great to see. We had a few late entries as well, but we had a bunch of people show up at the last hour, which was great. And our numbers for the auction are significantly up. So last year, I mean, you probably all remember there was the pie that sold for quite a bit of money. This year, the money was sort of more evenly split across the entire auction, but numbers are looking very good. I'll have the final amounts. We're just tallying those up next month. That was generally the case across our part of the state, is that everybody's auctions were up significantly. People were in the mood to spend some money this year, so we're thrilled to see that. So that'll be great for both our kids and the Livestock Scholarship Fund. Right now we are at State Fair, so we sent youth entries for dairy judging, who did very well last week, placed in some areas. And then we have obviously displayed in the youth building of all of our State Fair entries from the youth building here in Pike. And then we have people showing pigs, we have people showing cows, so we have a bunch of kids up there. I will say it has not been smooth sailing. So the State Fair office is, so it's not yeah, it has not been great. So the State Fair office is down a lot of staff members. I think I mentioned this last time, they went from 9 to 1 person per entry. So then we have seen significant decreases in other areas of the State Fair, and we have not had much support from the state 4-H office. So things have not run particularly smoothly. It's been fine, but like we've run into a lot of bumps, you know, from everything from dorms to somebody didn't get ribbons in time. So one of my staff members was like arts and crafting ribbons from last year. Like, it's been a bit of a thing. So we will see how that shakes out. I do know we have some angry families, particularly on the horse side. Horses at State Fair are always an issue because there's beautiful horse facilities and the 4-H horses are always shoved into basically a glorified tent, close out to where the edge of the fairground is. And this year we had some families show up and immediately scratch because the tent was in such bad condition and they didn't feel like it was a particularly safe situation.
They got a tent for the 4-H horses.
Mhm.
So I was there Sunday, they've redone both horse barns. I can't imagine, all sliding doors. Some of the stalls are poured concrete.
Yep.
All new hardware. I can't imagine what that costs.
I
And
mean,
it has hundreds of stalls.
it's beautiful, but the 4-H horses are never stable there.
I can tell you what I know about this. And I watched the news and they interviewed the interim superintendent of the fair. And he was talking about, he really didn't know what was going on. But he basically was his message on the news. He says, I knew, he says, you know, we're supporting agriculture, you know, the same old routine. The organization, the New York State Horse Board Association, signs a contract with the fair, just like they do with the Wyoming County Fair. So our guy talked to whoever was in charge, and he says, I got no idea what I'm doing here. He said, all the staff is gone. He said, we're just hanging on by it. You're looking, this is the Empire State.
Mhm.
And you know, the money that goes through the state.
What's in the horse stalls that,
shows for the Coliseum.
Yeah, so shows for the Coliseum and open shows. So the general consensus has been over the last few years behind the scenes that they particularly don't want 4-H horses at the fair anymore. I think probably has to do with liability more than anything else, but also logistics. It does take, like, we have multiple meetings before the state fair because horses require, right, certain health records that other animals don't, and transportation fees. So my suspicion is I wouldn't be terribly surprised if in the next year or two there just aren't 4-H horses at the fair. We see kind of similar things in certain other areas, but horses are the big one because of the liability and the health piece. So we'll see. Our families weren't particularly thrilled, but obviously we don't control the fairgrounds, so there wasn't much we could do in that regard. Our other families have had okay experiences. Actually, entry this year was really difficult. They've really cracked down on sort of what time you can get in and what you can get in for. And so I'll just use my example. I brought kids through dairy judging and they weren't going to let us in, even though, like, you know, kids have all their t-shirts on and it's obvious what we're there for. So it's been really difficult to get in and out of the fairgrounds. Apparently, our local did do like a photo shoot for 4-H, but none of us knew anything about that. So it happened. I don't know who was there, who attended, but it wasn't anybody from.
Nobody was there on Sunday, I can tell you that.
That's the other thing. Attendance is way down. I mean, I was there during the week, so like, you know.
Well, on the news, the state news report, all these are record days. Well, I've been there on record days in that parking lot. You can't get another car in that. It was half empty, so it wasn't a record day. And 4-H kids that are showing at the fair, my neighbors in East Arcade. There's 6 kids from the entire state that are showing pickets at the fair. 2 of them are from Wyoming County, 2 of them are from East Arcade.
Yeah,
And
it's
there's probably, what do you think, 300 stalls or
It's a big barn.
in a big barn?
a huge one.
Yeah. So there's like a half dozen pigs in there. Unbelievable. They should do well.
Right, like someone's put on the premium.
And you're right. You know, I was telling these guys before the meeting, you know, typically the fair, somebody, a representative from the fair will be there to hand out the, you know, the ribbons, and they have, you know, a banner that says you're the New York State Fair, Linkway Marshal and Champion. Nothing. Nobody knew, nothing. And the Coliseum was just a pig pen. It was just terrible.
That has been our experience, that it's been sort of a nightmare from top to bottom. So we'll see, and we keep being told that, well, it's a transition year and et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see how next year goes, but based on, you know, we have some angry parents, we have some angry kids, like I will be interested to see how next year actually goes for us.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. It really is. And like you said, everybody's there to have a picture taken, and that's the end of it. Where's the commissioner?
No, it hasn't been there as far as we know. I mean, all of the communications we get from Ag and Markets are mostly about the concert series, so it's been not great.
Just so everybody knows, the exposition center, which was randomly tore the racetrack out, tore down the grandstand, and built the exposition center, $50 million. We talked to a vendor who we know, we've been dealing with him for a number of years. He said, he lives in Syracuse. He said, the only thing that has been used for in his, since it's been built, other than the fair week, was to do COVID shots during pandemic. Those things do. And there's a lot of hockey, the floors up, so you can freeze it up and play hockey on it.
How long ago was this built?
Only like 3 years.
Probably closer to 5, because that's when they started coming out with the infrastructure grants for the county fairs.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
It just hasn't been used much since.
the story was, that's why they came out with those.
Oh, so where's mine? Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
I have no proof of that.
and there's nothing in the building. I mean, well, there was a glider in there and a couple of snow blowers for, maybe one snow blower for airstrip or something. National Guard had set up. Unbelievable.
It is a beautiful building.
That is beautiful, since I've been to the state fair, but
Then they tore all the grandstand down where they used to have shows and moved it up the road like a mile. So you know, you got this captive audience at the fair,
Right.
but nobody gets to see it because of any of the shows, because, you know,
The venue.
I don't know, if I was a hamburger guy, I kind of wish that they were having the show there instead of half a mile away, you know? Wow.
Yeah, it's been an issue. We'll see. So the other big issue that we had is that the 4-H state office, Toronto Cornell, was really slow. And so usually we would be doing, you know, a lot to do with our state fair entries, our parking passes, our dorm reservations, all of that would be done usually leading up to our fair. This year we were having to do a lot of it at the tail end of our fair because they were so late, particularly on the livestock side of getting information to us. So we had, you know, a couple of full all-nighters putting in entries, like it was just really difficult to get things to them. And so, you know, I think the state office is gonna have some complaints about participation, but particularly for us in Erie, right, as you imagine, a lot of fairs up against the state fair, you know, like they didn't really give us enough of a window to turn things around as quickly as I'm sure they would have liked, so.
Did you ever see a parking pass?
So that was a huge, I won't go into the dramas of the 4-H parking passes to across the state, but so in previous years, basically what we've done is put in for an application of we need this many day passes, this many week passes, this many parking passes. And they just send it to us, right? Like their 4-H gets unlimited whatever that we need. This year we were limited to 99, which for us is not a huge deal because a lot of families go on their own and camp. But for some offices like Erie who send, you know, 200 people or something, was a big deal, but they were all electronic. So we had to enter in a code for them and then hand them to families. So families had to come to us, which, you know, during fair, we don't really have people of doing that. So they had to go to the office, but we were in the office for the fair. So it was a time.
We were supposed to have parking passes, and the guy says, he's out there, got, you know, by gate 11, you know, he's got his desk with all this stuff on it, he's looking through, I can't find it, he said, just go on in and tell her I said it was okay. So we tried to go by the Coliseum, you know, but they let us in, but same thing with the horses, with the trailers, nobody had a pass, nobody did nothing, you know. Unbelievable, just so, as I said, like, that's, you know, months before the state fair, nobody knew what the schedule of events were. Mike had their schedule out for 2 months, and here's the state fair, nothing.
No,
Unbelievable.
we,
Obviously not priority.
No, it's-
we think it'll be interesting to see where state fair falls in like the budget priorities for agri markets, because obviously it was previously sort of, you know, they had extended the length of it and it was going to be this huge flagship program, and now I have suspicion that it will not be, not just based on this year, but based on those conversations. The other big piece that I anticipate, which doesn't impact necessarily this county, but I think will impact agri markets generally, is that those taste stores, which you see kind of along the interstate and everywhere, which are the Taste New York stores, which sell New York farm products, some of which are around county farm products. Those were also one of Governor Cuomo's kind of that project's babies. Those do not make any money or do not make. Some of them do, but I will say that they're usually downstate, and so we think both of those in the state fair will probably be deprioritized in the next round of budgets, just because they were so associated with Cuomo that we have a suspicion based on what we've heard from agri markets so far that local's gonna kind of pivot. The commissioner has been really absent from both Taste New York events recently and the state fair, and so we suspect, you know, those probably won't be budget priorities, which is a shame because they certainly invested a lot of money into those fairgrounds and the expo centers. Certain amount of money. So anyway, state fair, lots of drama, but we'll be fine. Actual fair, we got through with pretty minimal issues other than our emergency flight patient. So one of our riders was injured in the equestrian show, Lydia Page. She is 15, not 60, as the initial report said. Which we had to deal with. Mostly we had to deal with a lot of rumors. She's in recovery. She does still have some neurological issues, so we wish her well, and we'll be checking with that family pretty frequently. Other than that, pretty minimal incidents, some general rowdiness, but other than that, pretty good. We found some fireworks in the big barn, which isn't great, but other than that, things went pretty well. So we cannot complain. Like some of the full numbers for everything next month. We're just finalizing entries now because we have to turn around state fair entries first. Other than that, looking into fall, we were just re-awarded lead county status for the shared business network for Western region. So I'll be sending out new contracts to all our counties in the Western region. We're still getting a lot of questions about what's going on with Livingston County. They are not in our region, but they are hiring for a new executive director. I understand there's quite a scuttlebutt about it, but they're supposed to have a new executive director in place by October. We don't have any shifts in our region, so things will look pretty much the same as far as the shared business network goes. Other than that, we will enter our magical season where Cornell and us start lobbying. So we will be in Albany in October and we'll be in Albany again in January. No one really knows kind of which direction the budget is going to head, particularly for ag and markets, because they've got their cards pretty close to their chest. Cornell Cooperative Extension saw a small bump in our 224 funding, which is the state law funding, last year. Senses that was very temporary. We hadn't seen an increase before that in about 30 years, and this was sort of just an extra little pot of money that they hadn't spent down, and so I would be shocked if that money comes back again this year, but we'll see. So we're doing a lot in Albany. In terms of what we're seeing locally, corn was the big issue this year, which I'm sure you've all heard a lot about already in terms of like yield and also just like we've been at semi-drought and then almost drought for months. And so that's largely what we're getting questions about, corn questions. Other than that, we're really seeing a big influx in questions about beekeeping because ag markets has now taken a larger role in regulating beekeeping. So we have a lot of panicked apiarists because now it is required that you have your hives registered with the state, and they can also be subject to ag markets inspections. So we knew this was coming. They had advertised it that it was coming for a while. However, we hoped there might be sort of like a, hey, this is when it's going to start. Here's the rollout. We had an inspector show up at a random CCE event just to say like, here, I'm here to look at your hives. So that would have been nice to have a little bit more heads up from ag markets on. But so people are a little panicked about that, particularly hobbyists, right? Who just have maybe a hive or two. It's just something they do for fun, but it is happening, and we're encouraging people to look at that new, all the new legalities associated with that.
Would you rather have somebody walk in and say, here, I'm here to clean the Coliseum, so you're not sitting in filth in here today at the state fair? All ag markets, right? Unbelievable.
Well, it's interesting because they're relatively new hires in ag markets, so they've been very nice, the people we talk to, but they do sort of show up and, nothing stresses people out more than people showing up their property unannounced, and usually they're not in any kind of trouble, but, that doesn't necessarily create friends. So that has been something we're fielding a lot of questions on. Other than that, we're getting ready for all of our winter maple programs, which should go off without a hitch this year. We had it last year, we're hanging on it again. CDL, like I think I mentioned this last time, is a little bit up in the air because BOCES has been kind of tricky to deal with in terms of programming and scheduling. We're trying to smooth that over a little bit, but they've been loath to schedule some of our classes, so we'll be trying to get those off the ground in the fall. We think it's a case of largely like, do they have enough instructors? We offset the cost of the classes for folks who participate through us for agriculture. Their courses cost more money, so obviously they want more people to take their courses. So we're kind of hashing that out with our MOU a little bit right now, but hopefully that will be an issue for our fall CDL class because it's, those are booked out months in advance for us here in Wyoming County. And then we're starting ag in the classroom again, unbelievably back to school soon. So we will be doing programming in Warsaw and Harry again. We had 2 very successful ag days in spring that were great. And we're looking to do a little more programming with Wyoming, actually, who hasn't done agriculture before, but they've been really interested. And Attica, we tend to be programming with, but we haven't been in there much because they have such a strong FFA presence in local agricultural program. But we actually joined their ag day last year too at the last minute, and we'll be doing some programming with them as well. So we'll be in a lot of the schools starting in a week or 2. And then 4-H enrollment starts all over again in September. So we'll be back in business for the new year.
Yeah, somebody told me that an individual wanted to get a CDL now, it costs like $10,000.
So this is where things get tricky. So, and I don't, like I said, we're still working things through with BOCES. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but it's been kind of a nightmare. So if you're going through BOCES, just their normal CDL courses, it can be really costly. I don't think it's $10,000, but between the road hours and everything else, it is very costly. Versus if you go through our program, which is only open to people who are in ag industries, it's heavily subsidized by community. Actually, I think pays a little piece of it. There's multiple scholarship pieces that come in, and then obviously we offer it at a reduced rate. So if they're ag-based and they go through our program, it's relatively affordable. If they're not ag-based, they really don't have a choice but to go through BOCES or a private class, at which point it is really pricey.
So you have to take these classes in order to just do
Yeah, so they have to take the initial class and then they have to log so many road hours.
And you complain we're short on CDL drivers,
Yeah,
right?
as we have 3 people with school bus licenses.
We know.
It's not a claim, there is a shortage of drivers. Everyone's a good driver. I mean,
Those are federal regulations too.
Yeah,
It's the government, just like the mandates of
I
vaccine.
wonder why you don't have them.
I mean, they just keep kicking you in the teeth. This is just how they.
so there are changes to the federal regulations too that have made it harder. They've just issued those within the last year. They don't impact a lot of the ag drivers, which is good for us, but terrible for like school bus drivers or terrible for like, anybody who's driving a semi essentially or trucking. So that has made it difficult. The classes themselves are not super difficult or lengthy. The road hours are the issue. So what happened during COVID is there was a pretty significant backlog of people who still needed road hours, and you have to complete those road hours within so many months of completing the class. So we actually had tons of people in this county who completed the class and couldn't complete the road hours in that length of time. And so now we have to go back and retake the class. And so that backlog, I think, has just spiraled a little bit. And now, like I said, I don't really know what the issues are in the bow season. I think it has a lot to do with the instructors. Seems to be some behind the scenes drama there that I don't really want to be privy to, but essentially, like, they're not able to get people for those road hours. So that's the piece that's.
So when they have the road hours, they're riding with somebody, they're driving.
Driving.
Yeah, they have to have so many hours in the cap with a registered instructor.
Rockland, smart boards, they got guys around the clock, someplace.
But they have to be certified.
They have to be certified.
The guy driving,
Yes.
the driver.
The guy riding
Right, they have to be certified.
can't be just with you.
Yeah, you know how many people I taught how to drive for school buses? And
You can't do that.
can't do that.
No, you have to be a certified instructor. And so what we get through our ag program is a lot of folks who, we probably know the rules more than we should, who maybe drive for a farm and then also drive else, part of their job is driving for a farm. But a lot of those farms now are sharing drivers, because there's such a shortage of people who actually have the licensure. So Mark Hortz, whoever, everybody's sharing them.
Most every school or school contractor will train you how to drive for free. And I've always said to friends of mine in the farm industry, as they were driving without a CDL when they should have had one, come to me, get your school bus driver's license, because it's the same license, just with an extra endorsement.
Just in the middle.
Pardon?
That's in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing, it's not for the class A. If it's how many times do you really see a class A on a smaller farm? They have a straight axle, a 10-wheeler dump truck that they're using for hauling for agricultural. But it's just, it's still CDL.
But it's only a matter of time that they're gonna start, you gotta be certified.
Well, I think, again, lane laws and STAs and stuff like that, they have certified instructors that they'll do it for free. It doesn't cost you $10,000 to get that class B.
You work for us for a while.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's only a matter of time, they're gonna turn around and say, who got me? I drive 5,000 miles in the spring. I don't drive 500 the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Are they gonna come out of me and say, well, no more than hours, and you gotta be certified?
Logbooks,
That's a lot of.
Yeah, I don't have logbooks. I had a phone call the other day from Mark.
between the state fair, the hunting meet. CPL, I don't know if I can stand any more good news today. You know? I mean, it's just wild.
Can't believe half of it, you know?
Oh, my God.
And again, like you said, you were 5,000 miles a year, I was a whole lot more. These things, I understand that if I went down to county highway, I wouldn't pass the test.
No, they're pretty intense, and what we're now gonna see, which I'm concerned about, is that obviously we have a lot of folks driving now who just didn't get a license, right? Like, so we have a ton of people on farms, which goes well until there's an incident, and then suddenly the farm is really liable, right, as is the driver, and so I think that's where I think we're gonna run into some trouble. But yeah, we'll see I'm curious to see how winter goes, because that's usually when we have a lot of these folks getting through these classes, but if the classes aren't up or there aren't enough of them, it's gonna be an issue.
This morning, I got a phone call from Ralph Marvin at the bus service, begging my brother and I to drive morning. It's been, $14-15 an hour, and I'm charging $90 in the garage.
Yeah.
But how do I make up for it?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. So we'll see. I'm hoping our fall class at least goes off without a hitch. We've got a wait list of like 30 people, so we really gotta get through it. Other than that, I will be at the September meeting to submit, we submitted, so I will say, we submitted our budget very early. I think we submitted it at the end of July, so we never received the budget letter, we just went ahead and submitted it because I knew August would be off the table for us due to both affairs, so we went ahead and submitted it early. So I will be here in September to talk about that budget request. Other than that, that's all I've got for now. I'll have lots more fair information next month.
Pleasure to see you next month. We also have animal control, just a monthly report is in their packages. Okay. So you can peruse that on your own. Mr. Roach, anything on the fair?
We don't have any final numbers yet. Haven't heard it from our treasurer. She's ready to meet, but preliminary numbers looked fine. Consistent with last year. Weather was good for most of the week, so that's always helpful. No major issues or problems. For the most part.
I thought it seemed a little bit down from 4 years ago.
Last year was a good year, and so last year actually was up. I mean, the only way we track it is parking, because we don't have any gates. So, and that was tricky because we had gone from $5 to $10 for the parking. Last year was the first year at $10, but it's consistent.
The new bridge looks really good.
The new bridge does look nice. It fits in nicely with the scene, ties right in nice.
I like the lights.
Yep. I know there was some grumbling from some of those people about the new bridge, but
It's not great if you want to take our lives. But we just did, honestly, we just kept to the same system we
Yeah.
used for loading and unloading animals last year, because we had done it once, it worked well, and we just did it again, and there was some grumbling from some of our families, but honestly, we'll keep doing it that way. It works really well.
for the most part, it works well. It's just that they can't, because of the guardrail and the height of the bridge and everything, you can't swing around. It's just as well. It makes it more of a footbridge, which is better. You still can drive over it with cars, trucks, et cetera, but you cannot make that swing.
It's 100% better than it was.
Oh, there were,
All that area that used to be a slap hole from the cattle barn and all that,
it's all cleaned up.
to me, I think
It's wonderful.
And what do they do, come in that back?
What's the weight capacity?
They usually do.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Like,
Oh, easily.
you're someone who's always driving a trailer
Might be
a couple
50.
times a year, and. But even though.
Yeah.
Did you allow them to come in on Friday night?
Yeah, we have a lot of people actually coming on Friday, more than we had anticipated. So we left Friday night and then obviously Saturday morning, but a lot came in Friday night actually. And that's the other thing, like that is much, it's not as condensed over that Saturday morning, so. No, we didn't have any issues, and we did take a couple of small things across it that after the auction, didn't have any issues.
You can drive, I think it's rated at 15 tons, so you can drive most anything across if they need to. It's just, it's tight when you get to the barn side to make it swing around. And if you're not a very good driver, chances are you're going to scrape your truck or trailer or something on stuff because it is tight. And it just works. It's not as if there isn't a solution in place.
It works just fine.
Take them over there and get their CDL test.
Drive around the fairgrounds, that's
I actually like it better.
I do too, because it's way less sloppy back there. Our issue is the mud, honestly. Yeah, like I said, the only night we really have traffic other than like, going out is the auction, and then we are very controlled over who's driving at that point, so like, it's, easy. No, for us, it's the families who have done it this way for 30 years, and we're mad about the bridge, but we have a bridge, is what I told us, there should be happening.
Well, and the new, for the fairgrounds, the new bridge that was put in, it just makes it easier. It's a safer entry and exit for everyone to go out and around, and people aren't backing up with foot traffic and everything else.
Whenever you're actually going around.
Exactly, just safer.
Another big event this Friday and Saturday,
This Friday and Saturday, Amish auction.
2 days.
2 days. Last year they had in the neighborhood of 130 horses and furniture and equipment and entertainment, quilts.
I might have to go.
It's worth a trip down if you, just to see it. They had, in the new barn, last year, they had 3 auctioneers going at the same time.
You'll never see as many Amish people in places as well there in Wyoming County.
And
they're from all over.
Yeah.
What time does that start?
It'll start early Friday morning. I don't know if it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock Friday morning, and same Saturday. And they end up around supper time. Like I said,
When do they start setting up?
oh, they're down there now.
Oh, there they are.
Oh, they started moving in Monday.
This morning, and never even know, it's like I was.
Oh, the front is filled with equipment, out toward the road. Thrashing machines.
Mowers, tedders, you name it, corn planters, drills.
Yes.
Arrows.
It's already filled. Had to go there yesterday after we got done meeting.
Yeah, they auctioned off.
Yeah.
Like you said, they got 3 auctioneers. Right?
They have 3 running all the time.
There big buggies, horses tied all over the place. A lot of them come in on somebody. Right.
Yeah. It's a good use of the fairgrounds, it's there. It's a nice facility for it.
Cattaraugus County Fair, it's the same deal. They have a big, moved out there earlier this year. I was going to town, different shoe specs. And, what's going on here? There's all these Amish guys.
Mhm.
Then I got down to the Amish shoe guy, and he says, oh yeah, he says, a big sale going on there. Sure enough, it was a 2-day there too. Heard them all over.
I mean, they'll be there. They started Monday and they'll be there through the middle of next week by the time they get all things picked up and equipment cleared out of there and everything.
Now, if we can convince the Wyoming County Arts Council to get there.
And I realize it's more easier to have.
Well, I see Jackie's on Boston Fair Association. Last year.
So we'll have a more complete report next month.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Mr. Burke, anything with farmland protection?
Yeah, we had a meeting last week and the farmland protection, were you on that committee?
I am on that committee, but I was at the state fair that day. so-
They did the selections for the applicants to go in, when that round comes up, so they're ahead of the game, they ranked them. And I think there was 6, so I didn't bring it with me.
I think 6 went through, I think we maybe had 8 in total. maybe.
Yeah.
So some really strong applicants.
Yeah. One of them is, owns some land in Livingston County too, and they're on there, so.
Okay, anything else on our agenda? Anything else to come before this committee? Okay, so adjourned.
Maybe help me with. So Don is doing this tree